So verse 2, for he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there's no beauty that we should desire him. The Messiah here is not special. That's verse 2 is all about. He's just not special. He's like a tender plant and a root out of dry ground. A tender plant is a weak plant. He's weak. He appears weak as people see him as he grows up. I mean, in a sense, this is the incarnation. That would be the parallel with Jesus' life. A tender plant, but he's incarnated, but he comes up as like a little baby. A tender plant, you know? He's weak. He's hunted. They take him into hiding. He comes as a root out of dry ground. That's interesting. Dry ground, I think the parallel here is the fact that when Jesus had come, there had been quite a while of really no major prophet in Israel, no major move in Israel. You know, God had protected Israel for some battles and things like that, but we're not talking about a spiritual revival. And so then Jesus shows up after a long time of nothing, kind of a root out of dry ground. So according to the Old Testament, this Messiah is supposed to be a priestly character, a kingly character, but according to Isaiah 53:2, he's also a nobody. Now, who fits that? I think the answer is clear. In fact, it says he has no form or comeliness. Now, those words, form refers to beauty, physical beauty, and the word comeliness refers actually to majesty, like a royal majesty. So he doesn't appear physically attractive, and he doesn't have the frills of royalty. So he doesn't show up with like on the white horse. He shows up on the donkey. You know, he's not considered like hoity-toity. That's the word I use that my wife laughs at me for. And I think modern TV and movies get this wrong. There's been a bunch of Jesus movies. Some of you guys have seen them. I like them. I love that they do these things. But we have to remember, like, this is an actor and this is not Jesus, you know. But they tend to always get this part wrong. They get the part about him not having the frills of royalty. They understand the humility of Jesus, the humbleness of Christ, and I appreciate that. But they always hire a male supermodel to play Jesus. And according to this passage, Jesus was not attractive. And if we have a clear teaching in the Bible that says he was not this attractive man, then it would actually be more appropriate to hire an ugly man to play Jesus Christ. That would be more biblically appropriate. And I think it would be more impactful for those of us who watch it. I think that would be really cool. I hope somebody one day does this. Make a Jesus movie with a Jesus that fits the description in Isaiah. Maybe he was short. Maybe it was like, what's impressive about this guy? And then he opens his mouth and he starts speaking the truths of God. And people are just like, whoa. And they're astonished at his teaching, which is what the scripture says. So that we should desire him. It says, no beauty that we should desire him. So it's unlike Saul. Saul was the first king of Israel. And he was head and shoulders above the rest of the Israelites. He was a big, tall guy. And for some reason, my dad told me this one time. He's he used to be 6'4". He's getting a little older now, so I think he's like 6'2". But anyway, he used to be a real big guy. Now he's a big guy. And he asks me, he goes, Mike, because I'm 6 foot, and he goes, Mike, you're kind of tall. Do people ask you to be in leadership positions because you're tall? And I was like, huh? I never had thought of that before. That never occurred to me before, and I thought, I hope that's not why I'm a pastor. Hey, tall guy, you teach. No, I hope that's not the reason. But I thought it was interesting because when he was in the military, they kept asking him to lead different things because he's 6'4", or at least that was his impression of it. They probably saw some other qualities that were in him, I imagine. But that was what it was with Saul. Saul was this big, tall king of Israel, and they're like, yeah, we can get behind this guy. Look, where is he? Standing in the crowd right there, man. He's the guy that's head and shoulders above everybody else. And so he seems impressive, like, we can follow this guy. Ended up being a lousy king, And then Jesus shows up, and who is he? He's the opposite. He appears meek. He doesn't appear impressive. You don't look at him and think, wow, something amazing is about to come out of his mouth. But then it does. And I think that's really neat. Now, there are, because of this contrast, like the king, the Messiah king who will deliver Israel from their enemies all around, versus this suffering servant of Isaiah and other passages like Psalm 22, where we're looking at a suffering Messiah. There are many Jews who believed that there were two Messiahs because they couldn't reconcile. How do you have a suffering Messiah and a ruling Messiah? And they thought there were two Messiahs. And their mistake was that they didn't see that there aren't two Messiahs. There's one Messiah. There are two comings. He comes once to suffer and comes once to reign. It's just that he has a life that lasts longer than 10 minutes. And he does both of those things. So there were, according to them, they thought two Messiahs. I don't know if this is a terribly popular opinion now, but back in the day it was a little bit more so. They called one the Messiah, the son of David, and one Messiah, the son of Joseph. And one was the suffering, and one was the reigning Messiah. And they tend to take a little bit of liberties with the text that I'm actually not willing to take. Verse 3 then, it says, he is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Despised and rejected by men. That's a strong emphasis of verse 3. He was rejected, he was despised. It is the ironic thing that the Messiah that God predicted over and over again in the Old Testament shows up on time, and the Jews don't receive him. But yet, that's what it's predicting. Here it's predicting, we did not esteem him. Isaiah is a Jew. He is writing to Jews, and he says, we did not esteem him. And that's one of the reasons why you know this suffering servant's not Israel, because you can't say Israel didn't receive Israel, and Israel despised and rejected Israel. This starts to not make any sense. It's about an individual who was rejected by them. He was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. So he knows hardship. He does not have smooth, easy living, and they hid. He will not get the respect he deserves from the Jews. He didn't get it from the Gentiles either. He was rejected by both and ultimately crucified. This is radically profound. To think about this, like, here's one of the evidences of God writing this. I mean, a Jewish prophet writing to the Jewish people about their future deliverer who they will reject. This is not how other religions do things. But it reads like real history. Like this is just what happened. Absolutely amazing to me. Now, some of this stuff is past tense. He is despised and rejected by men. That's present tense. And then a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and we hid, past tense, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. So we see the future tense and then present tense and then past tense kind of mingled together a little bit. And that's just sort of the language of prophecy. Sometimes this happens in the prophetic because it's sort of looking at the event. And I don't know the whole reason why, but it just seems to happen that way. But if you read back in 52 verse 13, it says that the servant shall deal prudently, he shall be exalted and extolled very high. So then it's future tense there. In 53 verse 2, it's future tense. He shall grow up before him as a tender plant. So he's going to grow up, and he was despised. It's just sort of the timeless nature of prophecy that it's sort of bouncing around, almost as though we're trying to reveal that this is just God is outside of time, speaking here from his supernatural knowledge. And then verse 4, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. Our griefs and our sorrows were carried or borne by him. These griefs and sorrows, I should mention, in a biblical sense, if you're looking at Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, these griefs and sorrows are caused by one common denominator, sin. Sin causes the grief and sorrows that are on this planet Earth. Either my sin or the sins of others, but it always comes back to that. The world has fallen from the moment of Adam and Eve. All creation came into this fallen state where there's bad things that happen, but also, I mean, the harsh that's been done to me and the harsh that I've done to others, this all connects back to this concept, his griefs and sorrows. So he carries these, the sin and the result of sin, on his own back. He's bearing this. Now, this is man's greatest need. I often want someone to fix my broken heart. And I do, but you know what? God actually doesn't say he wants to fix our broken hearts. He says he wants us to have broken hearts. That's really different, isn't it? The Bible uses the word broken heart to mean a heart that is broken, like a horse that is broken and now willing to submit. When you break a horse, we broke the horse. Now the horse will go where I tell it to go. And God's like, you need to have a broken heart. A heart that will be led by me instead of by other things. Because the real issue of man isn't like, Lord, I need someone to hold my hand. I mean, I like that. That's good. It's not a bad thing. That's good. But that's not my deepest issue. In fact, if you were to ask people, what are your deepest needs, and have them fill out a form and just go around America taking a survey, how many of them would say forgiveness of sin is my deepest issue? But yet that is my deepest issue because that's the thing that gives me what? Eternal life. They might say paying my bills, getting my car repaired. These are important. But by comparison to sin, nothing. I need my sins forgiven. That's my big need. That's my deep, deep need. And this is what he carries on his back.